All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Come Fund Me Now, Please, ! Which makes us sound a little desperate for funding, but we are, so that's about right. In this session, we have a panel of arts administrators and leaders who have been successful in either starting up and or leading smaller or emerging arts nonprofits, and often have to compete with larger, more established arts and cultural institutions for funding and resources. Today's discussion will focus on some of the challenges of getting funded and some of the strategies these arts administrators have developed to successfully fund and support their mission and work. Additionally, I just want to encourage everyone post-conference to come back to the SphinxConnect webpage and specifically this session's landing page. In the weeks following the conference, we will have a list of resources and tips for fundraising when you are just starting out. So come back and learn a little bit more and do a little bit of a deeper dive. Excuse me. And with that, let's get started with introductions, and then we'll jump right in. I'll start with myself. I am Stephanie Strasberg. I'm the Director of Institutional Partnerships for Sphinx. I oversee a portfolio of about 2/3 of our budget, about $3.5 million annually. And another part of my work has been, I've had the distinct honor and pleasure of working with some of our alumni, people looking to branch out into arts entrepreneurship, and have been able to help guide and advise them on pathways to develop sustainable fundraising strategies when you have limited time, resources, energy, money, etc. And with that, I'd like to start with our panel, and I'll start with Junior at the very end. If you could just introduce yourself and tell a little bit more about your organization, the size, the scope, and what your mission is.
Hi, everyone. My name is Junior Lopez. I'm the founder of the Young Artists Orchestra in Las Vegas. It's a youth orchestra that started with about 22 students and has since grown to about 130. We have 2 orchestras now, one that deals with students around age to 16. We have another one that goes all the way until age 22. So we do have college students in there as well. The program started with about a $2,500 investment that I used out of my own pocket. And since then, the orchestra operates on about a 200,000 plus budget, and we have a staff of about 10 people, 1 full-time, the rest part-time, which includes a bookkeeper, teachers, staff to help me, things like that. I think I've answered everything from the beginning.
Good overview of the context of what we're working with in terms of organizational resources. Melissa?
Hi there, I'm Melissa Coppola. I am a co-founder of Girls Rock Detroit. We're a nonprofit that fosters creative expression and self-esteem in girls, transgender, and gender nonconforming youth. We founded in 2014, and we started with a budget of $3,000. And last year we had a budget of about $60,000. We ended with the year with about 1 year-round paid person on a part-time salary and 6 seasonal workers that help through the camp programming season. Everyone else in our organization are volunteers.
Tina?
Hi everyone, I'm Tina Rowan. I'm the founding executive director of Accent Pontiac, which is an El Sistema-inspired organization in Pontiac, Michigan, which is just about 35 minutes north of here, north of Detroit. And our mission is to strengthen Pontiac's youth and community through equitable access to intensive and consistent music making. We are currently in our 3rd year of programming. We launched in 2016. And right now we have 2 partner schools within the Pontiac Public School District. We're serving about 260 students with during and after school programming at the schools. Right now we're offering percussion classes, brass classes, and woodwinds classes. And we're serving students 4 days a week, 2 hours a day after school. And in addition to that, we have student performance opportunities, field trips, guest artist performances, composition-based workshop weeks, and a summer program. So we've been able to grow each year since we've launched. So right now, whereas we started with 1 full-time staff and teaching artists, this year we're able to have 3 full-time staff and 8 teaching artists who are working for our program.
Excellent. Okay, well, I want to start off with everybody going back to the very beginning. And I'll start with you, Tina. What was your first significant success or breakthrough in fundraising for your organization? And what made it significant? And how did it serve as a springboard?
Sure, I'm going to give a little bit more context to how Accent Pontiac was launched before answering that question, because I think that helps to kind of set it. My position was unique in that the board was actually created before I was hired in, and there was funding that was already raised before I was hired in. So I was in that really unique and very fortunate position to come in and being asked to implement a program and not have to fundraise immediately, which I mean, is the dream, right? And so I came in, and for the first year was solely just working on implementing a program. And then a year in, the board was like, well, actually, you need to start raising money because this needs to be a sustainable program. And so the first thing that I did was went back to where the startup funding came from, and instead of just having that be a one-time gift of startup funding, actually creating a future relationship with the partner organization who gave us that funding, and got them to agree to multi-year funding. And so that, I think, was my first real success. And then after that, I quickly realized that if we were going to grow in the way that we wanted to, we couldn't only rely on this partner organization, that we needed to be able to continue to network and create more awareness and support for the programming. And so I think the first grant that I wrote, which was the Presto grant through El Sistema USA, was the first time to be able to see that we're getting funding besides just where the startup funding was coming from.
Great. And just a follow-up question. Do you think that having the El Sistema model as kind of something that's more ubiquitous, more people are familiar with it, does that help legitimize your organization, or maybe not legitimize, but help with awareness and have people grasp what you're trying to do in the community and just have more visibility and awareness? Has that helped with fundraising at all?
Yes, so it was really great for me to already from the beginning be part of a network, and to kind of have access to, if not resources right away, access to people who had networks and who were doing similar work. And so I was able to have mentors from the very beginning who were helping to advocate for the work that we were doing in Pontiac, and that really helped spread awareness and legitimize the work that we were doing. And so when I was reaching out to a funder, having one of my mentors also being able to support what I was saying to that funder and advocate for the work that we're doing in Pontiac was extremely helpful in building relationships with funders.
Great. Melissa, same question to you.
I think I'm going to have to jump off what Tina said and go back to the beginning because it makes more sense that way.
Please do.
So Girls Rock Detroit started with 3 people in a coffee shop talking about an idea that was based largely on a national movement. There's an international organization called the Girls Rock Camp Alliance, and they do programs all over the country, and there's new ones popping up every year, but I believe there's more than 100 camps in the world at this point. But we really wanted to bring into Detroit because the people who were meeting were all traveling out to Chicago just to volunteer for a program because we all really believed in the mission. So we started talking about it. The most difficult thing for us to do initially was to find a space to put on the camp in. So the camp is a 5-day program. We put together bands, girls write songs, and they perform on instruments they've never played before. So it sounds kind of unbelievable to people who've never seen the program run before, so that was the first thing we needed to solve. Very luckily, we were connected with Michigan State University's Community Music School, and they read our 1-page prospectus and thought it would be wonderful to take us under their wing and take us on as a sponsor. So they sponsored our program. We had our pilot year, and then the following year, with all of that under our belt and having proof like, yes, this program works, having some photos and proof of that, then we started talking with the Excel department at the University of Michigan, where I was finishing my master's degree. And after showing them kind of what we were doing and also expressing our most pressing concern, which was having instruments for the program, we spent all of our time with volunteers only, trying to just get the instruments to bring in and have the girls play. So that was such a huge obstacle for us. It was something we were trying to solve. So I spoke with one of my professors, Mark Clegg, and I was taking a film music class with him at the time, and he had mentioned the Excel program. And at the time, I actually didn't know that nonprofits would really fall under the umbrella of entrepreneurship. Now I know much better. But there was a lot of funding opportunity there. So I'm really, really glad that I was connected with them. And through that, I was able to get a grant called the Excel Prize. That's a yearly $10,000 grant towards funding of an organization that proves a lot of social impact and benefit to the community. And so the $10,000 allowed us not only to purchase an instrument library, we were able to have a pilot program of an instrument loan and for the year where we are not having the programming so the girls can borrow it. And we also were able to hire our first paid year-round staff person. It was on an hourly basis. We started super, super small, but that was some of our first breakthroughs.
Awesome. I was hoping you were going to bring up the Excel prize because I have a follow-up question to that. Similar to Tina, did you find that having the backing of the University of Michigan or having won the Excel prize, has that elevated your program and has made it more comfortable for more funders to come on board, do you see?
Absolutely. I think that was totally legitimized our program for sure. I also think that having a connection to the larger international organization with anybody being familiar with that is super, super helpful. After we achieved after we were granted the Excel Prize, we actually were contacted by Spotify, and they chose us as one of their holiday gift grant recipients. So we were able to get another $11,000 through that program.
That's amazing. Great. And now, Junior, if you could just talk a little bit about your early days.
So the program started in 2015, and initially we actually had a backer. We had an organization that was going to give us $35,000 in hopes that we would be tied to them and we wouldn't be competitive. So we had made all these plans on the kids we were going to be recruiting and how the orchestra was going to be structured, and then they disappeared. And it was tough because it was right around where the school was starting. Like it was, I think, mid-August. We had no funding. We had no space to do any rehearsal. We had nothing. And so I pulled money out of my account just to at least get the venues to do the concerts. And I had met with a gentleman at a concert who was on the board of the other organization, and he was the one that gave me the heads up that this is what they were doing, and obviously they were threatened by the organization going into existence, and he actually was a big help. He reached out to another organization that had a thrift store that was empty, that was just sitting there, and he convinced them to let us use the thrift store just for rehearsals, and that's sort of how we started. Eventually, we were introduced to a woman who's, I don't want to say her name, but she's pretty much on the news a lot politically, and she had a space that was also available that was just sitting there, and she allowed us to use it, and she said, come on in. She was a big lover of the arts, but hadn't really I guess financed it or was involved on a regular basis. So she opened the doors for us to use the space. The program went from 22 kids within the first year to over 100 by the end of the first year. And it was through an Empower grant here from Sphinx that we added the second orchestra. And we've maintained it around the 130, 140 level just because we don't have the capacity, like scheduling, to have another third orchestra, although we have talked about it. Eventually, that same individual, I had a meeting with them, and I had actually gone in to ask for just over $60,000 for some programming ideas and some cameras and equipment and instruments that we wanted to buy. I walked out with 50, which I was happy about. And right before I walked out, she asked me a question about if there was interest in renaming the whole organization. And when people have money, there's this thing that they kind of want to put their name on it, put their name on things. I'm sure we've all probably have seen that. But it wasn't actually her name. It was to honor someone who was close to the orchestra. And so we talked about it, and that was probably to date, it is the biggest award we've been given, biggest gift. And they gave a 3-figure donation to the orchestra. And that was to go to the tuition-free program. Basically, the entire program is free. Nobody gets charged anything. Anybody can come as long as you're dedicated, you work hard. You know, the doors are open. So
Yeah. No, that's
basically it.
fantastic. That's a roller coaster ride. You know, yeah, great. I'll start with Tina again. I just want to give a little bit more context to your organization. What is your current primary source of funding? Is it individual donors, corporations, foundations, in kind? And what has been the type of funding that's been the most difficult for your organization to secure, and why do you think that is?
Sure. So the biggest source of funding that we have right now is through that partnership that I talked about earlier. The organization that gave us the startup funding is still continuing to contribute the majority to our budget. And that has been extremely helpful to be able to build from there. But grants and individual contributions are pretty close behind for this year, which is the first year that we've really been able to diversify our funding that much. And in terms of the most difficult, I think right now it would be corporate contributions. We've been able to get individual contributions. We're starting to get more grants. In kind has been a big part of our budget as well. But we have not yet been able to get any corporations to sponsor us. And I think a few guesses, I mean, one, it takes relationships and it takes time to build those relationships with corporations. It's very competitive for who is applying for funding for corporations. And a lot of times the corporations have a very specific focus for what aligns with their mission. And we haven't yet found something that's been an exact fit and haven't had the time to really build the relationships for them to come and see our program.
Okay, Melissa?
I think I have to say the same. Most of our budget, more than half, comes from individual donors and from foundations. Foundations is more like a fifth of our budget, but corporate donations have definitely been the most difficult to secure. I would say that, like Tina's organization, also in-kind donations is a big part of how we get by.
Junior?
For us, it's actually a mix of foundation grants and ticket sales. And early on, I realized, like when Melissa and Tina said how competitive it is, it is tricky to get grants, and you can use the same grant, you'll get one, and then you'll get denied from another 9 or whatever. So one of the things we did was we tried to structure a way to make concerts profitable. And we bring a lot of revenue from ticket sales. So between foundation grants and ticket sales, we probably bring in 60 to 65% of our budget covers just that.
That's great. And ticket sales are a little bit more predictable sources of funding. You do think, or no? No,
they're
not at all?
You know, they're not predictable. Okay. And I can tell you this. We normally run anywhere from 10 to 20 events per season. And some of those events can bring in $5,000-6,000 in tickets. Others can bring in 1 or 2. And last year we played around just with Star Wars, you know, and Star Wars was a huge success for us. It brought in over $20,000 in ticket sales just on one performance. And we repeated it, and we were at a smaller venue, and we were able to bring in another 6. And of course, Star Wars had a following. We also booked the concerts around this time of the new movie that had come out in December, and so that helped. But you can't just rely on the grants. They're hit or miss, and that's why we're always constantly looking for other ways to bring in revenue. So
that's great. Very resourceful of you. Next question. Okay, you guys, some of you, in the beginning when you introduced yourselves, you kind of addressed this, but just to kind of make a point, how many dedicated full-time fundraising staff members do you guys have? And I'm asking this question for a very specific reason. And I'll start with Melissa, I guess, this time.
Specific staff for fundraising, no. But we have last year we had 1 year-round paid person, and right now the organization is in a process of finding a program director who will be helping with fundraising efforts.
Okay. And Tina?
We have 1 development director, and she's been with us for just about 3 months, so it's a very recent thing.
And Junior?
We have one person that does all the fundraising, which is me. And we ended up adding, this year, we added a guild made of friends, families, and even some parents. And it's been great because they do bring out revenue from random places you would never assume. And I think to date, in the first like 5-6 months, they brought in over $10,000. And next year, we're looking to hire like a grant writer who is able to help, because we have a list of maybe 100 foundations or people that regularly give money, but I can't get to those 100 plus. There's not enough. We need help. And
No, it's a very real and very common problem for startups. There's a lot of splitting of time between program and development for a lot of people, and so that kind of begs the next question. What is your strategy in terms of prioritizing fundraising and networking opportunities? Specifically, what is your criteria for evaluating a funding opportunity? Not only whether or not it fits with your mission or your work, but if the time and resources in cultivating a donor or developing a proposal, is it actually going to be worth it? Is there a good shot that you're going to get that money? So I'll start with Tina, if that's okay with you.
I think our philosophy in evaluating funding sources, starting with where your network is and where your relationships are, is where we're starting. So if we know that we have some sort of connection to a program officer of a granting organization or a foundation, we're going to start with that, because that's a much more realistic chance for getting funding, to actually have a personal relationship with someone than just applying for a large foundation who has never heard of your program before. And similarly with individual giving, starting with where your network is, starting with who is aware of your program, who is already engaged with your program, who may have already donated to your program, and meeting with them, developing the relationship with them, and then being able to use your supporters who are already there to introduce you to others and to build your network from there. And just a few things. As arts organizations, just having our students go out into the community and perform also creates awareness of what you're doing and allows you to meet people who might become future supporters and funders of your program.
Melissa?
I learned the hard way how to evaluate that, because I've definitely, in the past year, I wrote a grant for a sort of newish corporation that was trying to start a granting foundation, and I spent hours and hours trying to write this grant, and then it turned out that they decided not to give away money anyway after many emails of like, hey, what's going on with this? But in terms of evaluating how valuable it is to apply towards something or cultivate a particular partnership or fundraising opportunity, I would probably say the same. How many direct contacts do you have? Is it worth the time that you're investing? And also for us, for Girls Rock, it was a lot of how much is it fitting in with our mission? Does this organization really value women, and do they value transgender rights? It was a lot of trying to navigate that, and it's very difficult to do. It was a lot of difficult conversations, especially when you need the money. So I don't know that I have a great answer for that, but it's something that we certainly struggled with.
Junior?
Okay. This is something that I personally like to do. I would go and find institutions or foundations, and I try to pull out their tax filings. And I like to see who they gave money to, how much, and why. And that has been a bit of a decider for me. If I look at it and I say, we kind of meet this criteria, and if it's not too time consuming, we'll do it. And what I mean by time consuming is, lately, I don't know if it's just me, but I've been seeing grants that are maybe for $5,000 or less, and it takes me a long time to do it, where a $40,000, $50,000 grant takes me not that long to do it. So there's a bit of a mix, but I think as far as strategy, that's probably my thing, where I would rather just pull up everybody's taxes and see what they're doing, and hopefully we align, and that will give me the yes or no.
And I'd just like to add, the bit of advice that I generally like to give is look at who is your competition, who are your peer institutions, who's funding them too. That's always a good way to kind of get an idea of balance of, is it individuals, is it foundations, is it corporations? And then also, I think one of the ways that you should evaluate a funding opportunity is to see what are, beyond the getting the grant, what does the grant entail? Is it a lot of reporting, a lot of evaluation, a lot of strings attached to it that is going to end up being a weight around your neck versus an opportunity to elevate your program? And so I always encourage people to look at small family foundations that generally have a very simple application process with very few restrictions on funding, if at all. It's a good way to kind of just get your feet wet. And if you have a well-crafted proposal that you can send to 10 family foundations, that's an easy, time-effective way to try and get, maybe it's a 2,000 here, 5,000 there, but it can certainly add up, and it's kind of a cost-effective way of approaching things. And then I think that's pretty much all the questions that I had for our panel. Oh, sorry. Oh, Melissa, go ahead.
So I also wanted to, I guess I left my last comment on sort of an awkward note, but what I would definitely recommend as well is beyond just looking towards corporations and foundations, is thinking about how you're doing your fundraising and looking towards other organizations who do similar work to see what works for them. Luckily, Girls Rock Detroit had the national model to look at, and so there's many, many different role models that we have around the country. North Carolina has a program or a fundraising opportunity that they do called Rock Roulette, and when we heard about that, we knew that it was perfect for us because it was an opportunity to involve the community in raising awareness around the organization, but also raising money. So it's an enormous crowdfunding plan, and what we do is we have people apply. We randomly pair women, transgender, and gender nonconforming people together into bands to write their own original songs. So it's an adult program, it's an adult concert, and people who wouldn't normally get involved just love that idea so much that they want to join, and then each one of those bands serves as a team to raise money, and it's a fundraising competition. So the winning band won recording time from a local studio. So it was an opportunity to raise money, but is also a great way to just like kind of put our fingers out and reach out to other people who wouldn't normally be involved.
Absolutely. Tina?
I have one more thought on this as well, just when you started talking. Thinking about how you can partner with existing organizations in the community and how similar goals can align, and you can partner to achieve both of those goals. So for example, this year for the first time, we are partnering with the Great Lakes Chamber Music Festival because they had a need for their artists were wanting to do more engagement with students. And one of the things we do is try to bring guest artists in to work with our students. So together we were able to write a grant, and they bring even much more legitimacy to our organization than we do. They're a national organization. And so that has been a really effective way to reach goals for two organizations and help us fund some of our programming as well.
I think that's an excellent point because I think a lot of times we think of each other organizations as competitors and not collaborators, and there, with finite resources, it can definitely feel that way sometimes. So when you find a true alignment, it's a really, really unique and good opportunity to take advantage of. So thank you for sharing that. That was all of my questions. I want to open it up to the room. If anybody has any questions, feel free to take the mic. And if we don't have any questions, I think it looks like we have Slido questions. So we'll start with Christian.
Okay. This first one says, could you share tips to ask for funding? Who and how? Thanks.
Tips for funding, who and how? Thank you.
So my tip would be to establish a relationship. I found that, at least in our case, the people that gave us money because they had a connection of some sort. Doesn't even have to be music. It could be education. One of which works in the medical field, looking at like drug abuse and trying to help people stay off drugs, and like their whole life's work has been that, and they saw the orchestra in a sense tied to what their mission was, and that was a great relationship to build on, and it's worked really well for us, and that's I think the best way to go about it, to always have a good relationship a personal relationship with people.
I definitely agree with that. And building on building a relationship with a person who is a potential funder, in my experience, it hasn't been that I've been able to meet someone and immediately just say, "Hi, I'm the executive director of Accent Pontiac. Will you please fund our program?" It doesn't work immediately in that way. And so what we've found is that multiple contact points and multiple chances to meet with someone and introduce them to your programming is going to engage them far more than just a one-time meeting and asking for funding. So for the first meeting, I might have a folder of some promo materials or share a video of our students performing and just introduce them to what we're doing and ask them about what they're interested in, what their goals are in the community as well. And then maybe the second time it's inviting them to one of our student performances and hosting them in one of that and having them see our program in action. And then maybe the third time that they're introduced to our program, then we're actually seeing if they are interested in funding the program.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I think also in addition to asking for funding, I would encourage everyone to think about what other ways people can support you aside from monetary donations, because in-kind donations and space rental and instrument donations, all of that has been so important to how we get things done. So I think in addition to money, just think about other ways that people can support, and also asking how people want to be a part of your organization, how they want to help you, how they can help you.
Great.
Can I add to what
Oh,
she just
please
said?
do.
About a month ago, I met a gentleman who is a friend of a close friend of mine, and he came up to me, and he's a collector. He owns millions of dollars worth of instruments. And he had gone to the local university and to another arts organization and said, I have these expensive instruments, I'm looking for students to play on them. And they said to him, we're not interested, but we'll take cash. So, but by the time we chatted, he's now loaned us about $160,000 worth of instruments.
Wow.
And like you said, it's like, money is one thing, but there's a lot of other things that you could do and build on just with items or instruments I mean, cash isn't everything. So don't ever just go for the money.
That's a really great piece of advice. Thank you, guys. Are there anybody in the audience that want to ask a question before we go back to Slido? Oh, please. Yeah, please do.
Hi, so I just had a question about as entrepreneurs and building your organization, especially when you're young, how you facilitate relationships in building your board and the role your board can play in helping you to either raise money or connect you to other people that can give you money.
That is an excellent question. Who would like to take a stab at it? Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Junior.
Okay. The board is extremely, extremely important, and it's also very dangerous. And with us, we have a very small board, and our board president had just stepped down recently, and she was an advocate for keeping the board small. She did not want the board to be very big, because in her eyes, as the board grew, the more people's personal ideas got involved, and basically the mission could be swayed a bit. And I've seen it happen with close friends of mine, where maybe one or two board members have their own intentions. The board's role really should be to bring money into the organization. I can honestly say that's not my board. My board is very supportive. They give me a lot of power, which I like. But again, there are boards that really bring in the money, but they do like to have a say as well. And there has to be a bit of a balance, and that's really up to whoever's bringing them in. In our situation, you can't become a board member unless you've been an advisor for at least a year. After that, they get voted in if somebody puts up the motion. Otherwise, you're not a board member.
No, that's really smart in terms of kind of vetting, and I think it probably helps with a lot of attrition, because I think there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, I can do it, and then, oh, I've overcommitted myself, and so, yeah.
A lot of it takes a lot of time. We meet once a month, but even when we're not meeting, there's work to be done, and there are people who they will say or act like they will work for you and they will put in the time. They don't. Anyways.
That's great. Melissa?
We have a different situation with our board. We started out with a 4-person working board. So for us, it didn't start out as a fundraiser, even though it kind of melded into that. Everybody kind of had every responsibility. So very much stretched across the board. Haha. So we did try to transition to a fundraising board in the past year. So it's expanded from a 4-person working board to a 6-person now fundraising board, and they're currently developing a strategy. As far as finding the right people, that was a really hot topic for us in conversations. Being a board that's full of founders, it's very difficult to move beyond that because you have a lot of personal interest in what your organization does. So to bring new people in that you may not know very well or might have different interests, as you said, it's very scary. But we did move past that point by having an application process, and we wanted to make sure that the people who wanted to join our board had a special interest or show a little bit about how they could help us. We do have a parent on our board of one of our campers, and she is a professional fundraiser. So it was a perfect fit for us, and it was all because they were already invested in the program. And then we also had one person who was hired onto the board who doesn't have any experience being on a board, but has a ton of contacts in Detroit. So we very strategically picked the people that we wanted to move forward with the process. I would say just application process is actually great, and then just meeting people, going to events like this is great.
And Tina?
I like what you said about moving from a working board to a governance and a fundraising board, because our organization had to do that as well. And I think it's important for any organization to really be able to define what type of board you need in that particular time. So starting as a grassroots organization, a lot of times your board is going to be a working board. Your board is going to be helping with the operations, but hopefully eventually as you grow, you are making that transition to a fundraising board. And as you do that, I think just making sure that alignment with mission is first. And that's the first thing you're looking for. You're in who you want on your board.
I have a quick actual follow-up question. Do any of you have a give-get policy as part of your board membership, where they either have to get money or give money directly to the organization?
Yes, we put a policy in our bylaws, and I believe the wording is something like every board member will give to the organization at a rate that feels generous to them. So we do not define it, what that means, but we do have 100% board giving at whatever level feels generous to the people on our board.
We do have a policy in place as well. For us, it is equivalent to the full tuition for one attendee of the program, or volunteering a week of your time at one of the programs. So it is also kind of flexible.
Ours does not have a policy. Our board members do give money back, and they give a lot of time at events, but we currently don't have that, although I kind of like the idea of putting it in.
Absolutely, because I mean, you have to think of it this way, and how it looks to funders. If your own board is not willing to invest their time or money in the organization, why would they? So you got to think of the optics of it as well. Okay, any more questions from the crowd or from Slido?
Okay, these two are the same, so I'm combining them. What are your thoughts on crowdsourcing for nonprofits, and does crowdfunding work for nonprofits?
Well, that's outside of my realm since I'm institutional partnerships, so I will definitely yield to the panel.
Crowdfunding got us really up and running. Our very first campaign was online, and it reached out to the MSU community because we were having it at their venue, the Community Music School. Beyond that, we also have a yearly crowdfunding campaign. We personally use CrowdRise as our platform for how we do things, mostly because our yearly fundraiser, Rock Roulette, as I mentioned, is a team-based fundraiser, and so it makes it fun, it makes it visible. You can see that other people are donating, you can see their names if they'd like to share that. And it's also just a really great way to be visible online and social media. A lot of it's very well integrated. There's a ton of platforms. It's very hard to choose which one works well, but for us, it's worked really, really wonderfully. Surprisingly, Facebook has also been a very great resource for us. People I've never heard of that none of our board knows does a birthday fundraiser for us, and we've made a ton of money just via Facebook. It's been very surprising. So for us, it's worked very well. I would recommend it.
It really democratizes the process and makes people feel like they are in control of their giving. So that's really great. Any other experiences with crowdfunding?
For us, it's a similar thing. Facebook is one of our biggest fundraisers. When it comes to the birthday ones, anybody can easily do that, and you don't even know it's happening. But like those Giving Tuesdays, or in Nevada, there's like a big give, things like that. We bring a lot of money through Facebook, and the great thing about Facebook is they take no fees. You get what people donate, where a lot of other platforms will take their 10, 20, 25%, and it does make a difference. So.
Absolutely. Did you have anything to add, or should we go to the next question? Okay, great.
Hi. I've been having a problem lately with my organizations with contacting them via email because I was using MailChimp, and the new Gmail promotions catch MailChimp, and you can't just send a mass email via Gmail because then Gmail decides you're a spam bot. So I just wanted some advice as to how you guys are circumventing that, if you are, or I don't know.
I mean, that's obviously a really good question. Maybe not if you have a solution to it, but have you guys run into that same problem yourselves? And, we'll open up to the group. Has anybody else?
You know what? I haven't ran into that problem, and we use a lot of MailChimp. It's every month we're sending out newsletters, and at least in our data, people are opening them. I haven't noticed, and even when they come to, I have multiple emails, and I send it to all of them, and there hasn't been an issue, but now you're scaring me, so I will look into that. But I'm sure there are other platforms you can use, but yeah.
Well, I mean, we're a creative bunch here, too, so if anybody has any... Oh, Mark, do you have a...
I don't have an answer.
Oh, okay. But you have a question. Okay.
No, I'm curious, when you're talking to funders, whether it's through a proposal or just in person, like what are the kind of arguments that you make, like on a practical thing, like the impact of your organization, that seem to resonate? Is it about having numbers and, quantitative stuff, like we reach this many students or whatever? Or is it about sort of the power of music? Is it the education piece? So I guess each of you, I'm sure, has refined a kind of elevator pitch over the years as you talk to people. What advice would you have to us about what that pitch should have in it that works for you?
We think about impact similarly to the El Sistema USA network, and so music is a way to really affect the whole child and positively affect the whole child. It's not the mission of our program isn't necessarily to have all the students that we're serving in Pontiac become professional musicians. We want that to be an option if that's what they want to do, but that's not the core goal of our program. And the way that we defined impact and what we're presenting on, we break it up into musical growth, social growth, and academic growth. And so musical growth obviously is what musical skills they're learning, how are they growing in that way. But we also are looking to define social growth, what life skills are our students able to gain from music programming, and how is our music programming preparing them to be positive contributing citizens and capable of achieving whatever they want after they are out of our program. And then academic, we're also wanting to show that music helps keep students in school, and that by having music programming as part of the school day for our students, that there are higher graduation rates, there is higher attendance. And so those are kind of the three ways that we break down impact, and making sure that it is important to be talking to funders about what the impact of your program is.
The biggest mistake that I made was in my first year. I walked into a meeting with nothing, and I asked for $50,000. And the person I asked said to me, "Show me the budget, show me pictures, show me." And I had nothing, and I got nothing. I walked away empty-handed. I got it the following year. But the one thing is, today people visualize everything. They want to see whether it's a video or a photo or whatever. Like it's important what you said, but I think sometimes just for them to see what your results are, that's the most important thing. And now I be sure to walk in with everything. All the numbers have to be, and the other thing is, they will ask, like if one year I asked for a very expensive camera, and they thought, why do you need a camera? And the reality was that we were paying a lot of money to have photographers. You know, it's $200 per event. It starts to add up. But if we had our own equipment, we could just have somebody easily handle it. We still have people that come and record the events, but we needed that, and we got it. Like, you're going to have to show them the specific reasons and a valid reason. So,
because of so many of our funders are individual donors, we're a grassroots organization, so a lot of our funding is done on a sort of smaller scale. A lot of our personal relationships have had to be cultivated. Luckily, most of the people who are giving us money are already invested in our mission in some sort of way, whether they're a woman in the music scene or they have a child who attends the program. They know that women are a minority in the music scene, especially around Detroit. And so I would agree to say that you need to bring people or show them what you are doing, whether it is via video or pictures. I think that documentation is really, really important. Most of the way that we have gotten our largest donations is simply bringing in people to our big showcase where the children are performing, or bringing them into one of our our fundraiser, yearly fundraiser, where people are, doing things in the vein of our mission.
Hi, my name's Chloe, and I have an organization myself that's just starting out. It's about a year old or close to a year. And I wanted to know, besides fundraising, what are good ways to just get your name out there, like your organization name, and then like myself as being the founder of that organization?
That's a really great question. Junior, do you want to start? I mean, you I'm sorry. You started this up on your own, so you got to have experience in that.
That's a really tough question. Where we live, where I live in Vegas, and the arts are not a big thing there. Where the casinos and the hospitality industry take all the attention. And Vegas now is getting close to about 3 million people. And so it's not a small town in any way. It's hard to believe that many people live there. And yet, there's not a lot of arts organizations in town. So it's different. Like I said, big population, small when it comes to the arts, so it's kind of easy to get to know everyone. For us, we were able to build up very quickly because of advertising on Facebook. And earlier I said that we monetize a lot of things. One of them is ticket sales. Last year we brought in, let's say, like 40-something thousand in ticket sales. This year we can bring as much as 90. So a lot of that is because of Facebook. I can target specific people. And when we do that, we're looking not just for music lovers, we're looking for families, for kids. And Star Wars, for example, brought in a lot of people that do not come to our concerts. So we have an audience already because of our students, and we're trying to bring an audience that has nothing to do with our kids or the program. And honestly, if you're able to get enough money to to advertise your program in any way, maybe if you have concerts or whatever, maybe advertise yourself. You'd be surprised how that ad pops up all the time. You'll see it, and people will see it, and that's a good way.
For us, I actually will share that I failed at this project the first time I tried to get it started. 2 years before Detroit started, I tried to start Girls Rock Ann Arbor, and I was met with a lot of disinterest because I was doing it all by myself. And I realized, I'd started a website, started a Facebook page, tried to do all the social media presence that I thought I knew how to do. And to be honest, it's just so difficult to do it by yourself. You're one person with an idea. It's way more convincing to people who are going to support you if you have a team of 3 or 4 people behind you, even at minimum. I think finding who really believes in what you're doing and wants to be a part of it is a really strong first step.
One thing that was really big for me in terms of trying to get more awareness both of the program and myself and what we were doing is having mentors, is having adults who you're able to go to and just pick their brain and ask questions and share your challenges, and they're able to help you through that. But also people who are willing to share their network with you, who are willing to introduce you to people, who are willing to advocate for what you're doing, has really, I think, been one of the single most effective ways that we were able to get support for our program, is having other people who are willing to stick their neck out in some ways to make those introductions for you.
Okay, so I think we have just about 5 minutes left. I was just gonna, give the panelists an opportunity to share with the group what you think the main takeaway, the main lesson, or the hardest lesson that you had to learn, even if it's just re-emphasizing what you've already shared with us today, but everything that you want to kind of like solidify in people's minds as they look to try and get some funding for their projects. Who wants to go first? Go, Melissa, you can do it.
You can't win everything. There is a lot of disappointment that comes with trying to pursue something that you believe in, whether you're a founder or a worker, whatever your relationship to your organization is. It's difficult to always come out on top. We've definitely had our fair share of struggles and scares and, oh my gosh, is this actually going to happen? But continuing to, look for different opportunities, meeting new people, just continue doing the work that you're doing. Believe in yourself.
I'm going to say 3 things. First, just re-emphasizing mentoring and finding people who will be in your court. Second, building relationships, I think is one of the biggest things in building support for what you're doing. And the third is that I think the 3 of us up here are all founders of our organization, and I think in what this session is supposed to be, it's having an idea and how are you able to get support for that idea. And it's a really amazing thing to be the founder of an organization. You are the one who knows it the best. You are the one who's able to speak confidently and most passionately about this project that you want to start up. So use that to your advantage as you're trying to get support.
Any last words, Junior?
My last words would be to find other ways to bring money in besides just grants or besides what everybody else is doing. There's a lot of ways to monetize a nonprofit. There's this weird thing where like the nonprofit has to ask for money all the time and ask for grants. It's a business. Like, you should be able to find a way to bring money in like any other business. So.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. And I just want to remind everybody that the closing plenary is happening. Dina Marie, can you give the details of the time?
It begins at 4:10 in the Woodward Ballroom.
410 Woodward Ballroom. Great. Thank you, everybody.